to be honest, like probably my favorite album.
You said that's about everyone.
No.
Spotify Classics is our picks as a music editorial team on classic albums. It's really a celebration of catalog music.
We're here to discuss classic hip hop and R&B albums, and one of the reasons why we started the program with hip hop and R&B have been bedfellows for so long. If you go back to the 90s, musically have been merging for so long. When you look at the stages of hip hop becoming mainstream, it doesn't happen without R&B.
I think when most people think about what a classic album is, people usually think about something that's 40 plus years old. We really wanted to focus in on the streaming era as we define it, which is 2015 to the present. Why 2015? Well, it was the point where the majority of people embraced streaming, and that's how they listened to music.
One thing about Classics as a program that I think is really exciting from the editorial perspective is because our job is mostly listening to a lot of music and trying to put it next to other music so people will discover it. We don't really get a chance to geek out and appreciate an album that much.
When I think about a classic album, the first thing that comes to mind is timelessness. I think about something that comes out during a certain period of time and ages well across a number of years. The albums that are universally regarded as classics, the ones that are top of mind, I think about albums that are transformative. I think about albums that completely shape or shift the landscape.
You can visit it and be like, okay, I understand not only what was happening in the world, but our social consciousness.
A classic album needs to have a very consistent, thoughtful narrative and thread, both sonically and visually. And secondly, be innovative and have an impact significantly on culture and the artists that come after. Can an album be a classic right upon release?
It's more rare. I think in most cases, it does have to age. You have to get accustomed to it. If I go back to saying something that's transformative, it's new. You don't even know what it is.
What I realized what instant classics do is that it creates this army, right? This ends up like just driving the narrative continuously. And
also the analysis of what the album and the body of work is.
You think that albums don't matter, but real artists pour years into work. You can tell the difference between someone who invests time in their projects. That's how classic albums are really created.
Does a classic album have to be perfect?
No. What is perfection?
I think it almost necessarily has to be imperfect. And I think most of the time when something is real and earnest and sincere, it has those imperfections that sometimes help you better understand the artist or what they're saying. Some of my favorite albums are not especially well done, to be honest, but they capture that moment perfectly.
I want to go before streaming so we really contextualize how disruptive streaming has been. What do you guys remember about the listening experience before streaming?
How do you contextualize streaming? Because I've been streaming since 2004. LimeWire, right, into YouTube.
Well, think about that word streaming, right? Because we're gonna get into metrics and jargon, right? Because every era has these defining terms. Yeah. People weren't saying streaming. I'm on LimeWire. You're not saying I'm streaming on LimeWire to give the shameless plug, but it's not until DSPs like Spotify that the word streaming starts becoming commonplace, right? So.
Yeah, and the only time you could really enjoy music is on the radio.
Right.
Or when you ran to your television and were able to watch it on MTV or TRL or BET. The privilege of streaming is that you get to enjoy music instantaneously, whenever you want, however you want to feel. You can evoke any emotion at any given time.
That's such a good point.
It goes from appointment listening, for the most part, to on demand, where you can literally have access to millions of songs and decide what you want to listen to. Streaming democratized music consumption, right? Beforehand, I think it's almost like there's a certain type of song, a certain type of artist that were handpicked and force-fed to the audience to a certain extent. But now, they're all on the same platform, so you're able to explore more.
Streaming definitely broadened my genre palette as well and globalized music in a way that I don't think would have happened.
What I love the most about streaming, which I think Alicia tapped on, which is the globalization of music. The fact that right now I'm listening to an artist that I know none of my friends are listening to from a whole nother country, right? And now I can take that be influenced by that culture and bring to my artist as a manager. I love the fact that there's no boundaries for your mind creatively, and also there's no boundaries for the fan. The streaming also made music a thing for the casual listener. Because for a long time, like if you were to go buy an album, you were either an enthusiast of the album or enthusiast of the artist. But like now it's just like, okay, like I have a Spotify account, I'm gonna just go listen to it, right?
The culture will respond to an album drop or even a single drop so quickly because streaming allows everybody the opportunity to check it out. So like when Renaissance dropped this year, it was like instantly everybody's having a conversation about it.
What else makes it possible now?
We're also in the space of just like social media, right? So now social media is giving everybody an opinion in real time. When that real time opinion is happening, you watch the debate. Oh, it's a classic. How could he drop that? This is so bad.
The audience and the fans are telling us real-time feedback. Our challenge now is to figure out, is something a viral moment that's having a moment on social media, or does it become something more?
It's based on artist to artist basis, right? Because some artists don't use social media at all, and that's the marketing tool.
Let's get into these classic albums. Where I want to start is like the 3 artists who have more than one album, right? Beyonce, Lemonade and Renaissance, Kendrick, To Pimp a Butterfly and Damn, and Tyler with Flower Boy, Igor, and Call Me If You Get Lost. What does it say about these artists that they're prioritizing a body of work at a time where the music was becoming more song-driven?
We were even talking about if Beyonce is an album artist, and I say she's always been an album artist.
Around the time where streaming was about to really start taking off, 2013, 2014, I think Beyonce sacrificed what it meant to be an album or an artist in this generation. She was like, cool, I'm going to forego trying to get the hits. I'm going to double down on creating a body, creating a story, and really just like creating my world.
Let's talk about Kendrick.
Damn is an album, again, I think that shows that you can do everything but don't have to give up your artistic integrity.
The second that album dropped, everybody's having the conversations like, what's the best one? Good Kid, Mad City, To Pimp a Butterfly, or Damn?
I think you have to take To Pimp a Butterfly out of that conversation.
I don't agree.
You have to.
No. If you're talking about like a larger scale, yeah, like you do a poll, right, including casual fans, yes, it's gonna come in third.
Even as a Kendrick fan, I was in the streets. Streets didn't like that album.
Define the streets, Justice.
I live in Atlanta, bro. From like an everyday perspective, bro, if I'm driving down Sunset, I'm not trying to listen to Pimp a Butterfly.
It fits more moods.
Like,
Damn does.
That's what I'm saying. So it's just like, I think that goes into like an album too. It's like, what part of my day am I listening to your music? And To Pimp a Butterfly is only when I'm, listening to wine. I'm drinking wine, like, vibing.
You have 1,000%
Yeah.
bumped To Pimp a Butterfly driving off Sunset. 1,000%. 1,000%.
That's not the record I went to. Maybe I was out of records that day. Seriously. But I love that album though. Like, that's headphone music for me.
Okay, so let's talk about Tyler's Flower Boy. It's the album where he kind of found his footing.
I don't feel like he left behind the audience he already had either with that album. I think that's one cool thing about that album, listening to it. You're like, it broadened the spectrum of who would like it.
The scary thing about Tyler is that I know he hasn't put out his best album yet. Because even the deluxe on Call Me If You Get Lost,
Incredible.
I'm like, oh, he got better from the album that just dropped a year prior. I'm like, oh, like he's gonna get even better.
All right, let's get into SZA, Control.
Oh my gosh, she's just that period.
I think SZA is honest in a way that a lot of us aren't able to be honest with ourselves. Control was like such a moment in time, and I go back to the question that we asked in the beginning about classic albums and how they're transformative. Like, it was just such like a clearly transformative moment for SZA in her career.
I remember when SZA came in and played us this album before it came out, and it was still my favorite meeting we've ever had with an artist, just because it just felt very, very pure art.
All right, let's take it to Atlanta. DS2. I'm just curious, like obviously you were working with Future at the time, like what was the intention, what was the mindset?
It was just like his time and his moment. It was Monster, Beast Mode, 56 Nights, Purple Rain, right? Like, this is like Future Hendrix, Fire Marshal Future.
If we're to look at the total list of classics that we have, that's the one on the rap side that I think is the most influential.
I just can't wait to see what the world says in 20 years.
That's such a good point.
His DNA is all over the place now, like all of these baby Futures out there. I want to know from you guys, what was it like in Atlanta?
You couldn't get away from it.
It was a special, special time. Like the clubs, like they shook. Like literally, like when you say like Fire Marshal Future, it's because like the Fire Marshal came everywhere we went. Like I remember we did a show in LA. We didn't even do the show.
House of Blues.
Yes, we didn't even do the show because we shut down the street.
Let's stay in Atlanta and talk about summer.
Women don't really have a version of a Future or a version of a, you know, whoever else was popping at that time on the hip hop
She
side.
really is a rapper.
And Summer does that in a delicate way. I think the first song I heard was Session 32, and that alone is like, what? I almost shed a tear. But like, I think Summer also feels like your homegirl, like your sister, like your friend.
The fan base around even just this album particularly is like still growing. I feel like people are still kind of catching up to it. If we were to do this again in another 5 years, it'd be really interesting to see what the retrospective is on this particular album.
A couple more albums to talk about. Bryson Tiller, Trap Soul. What's the first thing that comes to mind when you guys think about that album?
Trying to catch that don't.
Bryson, he switched it up. You like really listen to like every song on that album over and over again.
Trap Soul was such a moment that like you couldn't even escape what Bryson was doing at this time. After this album, there were so many little Bryson Tillers. So many. There still are.
All right, let's talk about Nipsey Hussle. 10 years later, after his original breakthrough, he put out an album that was commercially successful and critically acclaimed.
For me personally, that's an album that changed my life. But I was late to that album. Before I pressed play on any song, Nipsey Hussle song, I just was watching his interviews, and it was like Bible for me. I was like, no, like I get it. Finally, I'm gonna give his music a chance. This was like 6 months of watching his interview. I pressed play, and you know the first song, you know, I'm prolific, so gifted, and from then on, I was like, he's probably one of my favorite rappers.
Are there any albums we didn't talk about that you guys want to make sure we speak on?
We have to speak about Blonde. When that album dropped, and I just walked down Fairfax, and I saw a bunch of people now with blonde hairs, I'm like, bro, he literally is the definition of like changing culture.
I think for me, it's a seat at the table. I think that Solange captured Black joy and Black pain in a way that like is forever changed. Even like the inclusion of people like Master P and her mom, and like down to like the visuals and how intentional she was.
This whole conversation is amazing, and it kind of mirrors a lot of the conversations that we have internally at Spotify. We're definitely trying to celebrate catalog more and be able to bring more attention to these really important cultural moments is through the Classics program, making sure that we're giving these things the space and the attention they deserve, and trying to draw more attention to this music.
Whoever's idea that was.
This guy right here.